Well, here we are once again. Boise State coming off yet another loss. Welcome on in to J Sports Bar. Of course, I am joined by the legendary wide receiver, Shane Williams-Rhodes. This is a feeling that Bronco Nation hasn't had to feel this many times this early in the season. 3 losses, Shane, through 5 games for the first time since 2001 for the Boise State football team. Is the sky falling, or are the Broncos about to right the ship and go on a run? Which one are we closer to here at this point?
We're closer to this thing of continually to fall. I don't know if we're going to be able to turn around in 1 week. It's not a simple fix.
Why is that? We sit here and, Nevada rolls into town. They beat Boise State 41-31. And in many cases, they looked like the complete team that we are used to seeing out of the blue and orange. Nevada head coach Jay Norvell went on record after that game saying that he felt like that is the most complete game the Wolfpack have played since he took over. Shane, this is his 5th season. Saturday was his 51st game, and he says that his team, his program, played the most complete game since he was hired as head coach. I feel like we're used to kind of seeing that complimentary football out of Boise State, but just haven't seen it so far. So why is this thing going to be so difficult to fix in your eyes?
I'm going to go back to what you just said about how Nevada coach feels about their team. The difference that we see, obviously, in that program is having a quarterback who can make the plays. He's not a guy who's going to be a little timid at times or be aggressive at times. He's always out there, and he's always going to make the play, whether it's him moving around a little bit in the pocket, not necessarily using his legs, but getting around some things so he can make the throws. And I'll say this. He has a great size, obviously. He's not throwing the best balls, but he's putting the ball in a place where his guys can make the plays. He's creating time for him to do that, whether he has to move around or not. But I think that's where the difference is. In the last 5 years, they haven't had quarterbacks like that can do that. And having a quarterback like that can leave the pocket and still make the throws, that's huge in today's game. And I think that's going to be a talking point that I probably reference back to this whole podcast.
Yeah, Shane, let's just cannonball right into this thing because, it has been something we've discussed probably almost ad nauseum this year. But when it comes to quarterback play at Boise State, people are just going to judge it way more harsh than most schools. It's so funny because I was thinking about this week, Shane. And the guy that helped set and create the standard at Boise State also, in a weird way, kind of ruined the standard and the expectations. The standard cannot be 50-3, which Kellen Moore went during his time at Boise State. Real quick, am I right on that? Like, the standard can't be 50-3.
In today's conference, the level of play that the guys that we play against in our conference, you can't expect it.
Okay, so
the schedules we play.
That needs to go out the window then, because whenever I put a Hank Bachmeier stat out on Twitter or something like that, there is always that person that replies, "These are meaningless." Kellen went 50-3 in 4 years, and Hank's already lost that many games this year. Believe me, I'm not saying 2-3 is the standard for this program. It's far from it. But if your measuring stick, if your barometer for a successful play at quarterback for Boise State is 50-3, I highly suggest that you move on and either go cheer for a different team or find a different sport, because you are going to be forever. You will be disappointed. Nobody's ever gone 50-3 before Kellen. Likely nobody's ever going 50-3 after Kellen. So if that's where your discussion starts and ends on judging success out of a Boise State quarterback, leave the discussion, because it's not worth having said discussion. Getting back to a more reasonable approach to this, though, Shane, part of me understands that Hank might not be playing perfect, but I do think that he shows toughness. I do think that he can make some throws. When you compare him to Carson Strong at this point in time, Carson is a rare talent, man. Like, he really can make any throw on the field. Last week, Jerron Johnson said he can make any throw on the field, and it'll likely show up on Sundays at some point in time in Carson's career. He showed that in the Nevada game. I don't know how much is reasonable to say that how much reasonable blame should be placed on Hank at this point in time. So what is your thought on that?
I agree with you. Hank's not playing bad by any means. Yeah. Hank's not playing bad. But
I feel like you're about to say but.
but that's not what it comes down to. It's not about if you play good or bad. We all know what the quarterback position is about if you win the game or lose the game. If you throw 3 interceptions, but you on the last drive of the game, you drive down and you score a touchdown and you win the game, we won because the quarterback drove the ball down and scored the ball. Okay. He might have put us in the hole, but he won us the game. That's just how football works. So whether you're throwing 4 touchdowns and 1 interception and a fumble, or whether you're throwing 3 touchdowns and 1 interception or 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, if we're not winning games, none of that matters. I think when games are as close as they've been that we've lost, yes, I think having a quarterback who can make more plays it could be and can bridge that gap easily.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal. The Nevada game was the most lopsided outcome of the season, if you will. Said 10 on the scoreboard. Honestly, it probably felt like a little bit more than that. But Boise State's 3 losses by a collective 16 total points. So I get what you're saying there. Like, that would suggest that if you have somebody truly special, and it's the one guy on the field that touches the ball every freaking snap, right? The quarterback. Oh. Maybe he can somehow find a way to score 17 more points and be better as a team at this point in time. But you brought up his fumble. I mean, is that an excusable fumble if we're on the same page about that he had an edge rusher on that play basically come untouched at him, right? Are we talking about the same play?
I mean, I can say this. I see edge rushers all the time and come on freed up, and guys who are mobile are able to avoid that one, which then on the back end, DBs see the guy coming untouched and they think it's a sack. They take their eyes off receivers. The quarterback just gets away. I mean, you don't necessarily have to get away and run. You just are able to make someone miss, and that creates a huge play. And that's where I'm coming from. Yeah, that's where I'm coming with it.
I think we saw a guy that was really good at that last year. Was a guy like Zach Wilson, who played for BYU as a first-round pick, able to be a little elusive under pressure. And as you said, if those DBs are peeking in the backfield, they think that the play is over. All of a sudden, he pops out and is dropping bombs over your head. And he did that a couple times against Boise State last year. Heck, he did it against pretty much everybody in the country that BYU went up against last season.
Well, Josh Allen do it too.
Hey, Josh Allen for the Bills. I actually, kind of got the chance to chat with a Bills coach. Excuse me, not Bills coach, a Bills scout. This last weekend, and Josh has probably gone on to even exceed expectations in Buffalo. He was good at Wyoming, but whatever. That's a discussion for another day. Sorry. So how do they fix it then, Shane? Because, personally for me, I know that this was a tightly contested quarterback battle. I don't know, I think Jack Sears is an incredibly accurate quarterback. We see him at practice. Like, the dude is accurate. Last year in our small sample size, we saw him start a game at Air Force. He was outstanding against Air Force. Again, I mentioned this during the summer on one of our podcasts that I can literally remember every one of his incompletions from that game. There weren't very many. And I think that out of his 20 attempts, there was only one true incompletion that wasn't either a throwaway or a drop by a wide receiver. It was a ball that on a drag route to John Bates, it was just a little bit high. That was his only incompletion in that game. But here's the deal: if coaches haven't gone to him yet, I don't know if Jack is the answer. I'm just calling it like I see it. I could be wrong, but if they haven't tried to go that route yet, I don't think he's the answer. So what is the answer?
I got two things on that one. My first one is, when you're at the point in the season where you're 2-3, I definitely don't think this is where you stick and keep doing what you've been doing, because obviously something isn't working. So I think
Yeah.
it's now we got to change something, whether it's a scheme, whether it's a certain position, something's got to change. You can't continuously do the same things over and over and expect a different result. That is the definition of insanity.
I get you. Really quick, Shane. So what is it easier to change? You say change scheme or change personnel? This late into the season, is it easier to change scheme or personnel?
I mean, it's easier definitely to change personnel. You switch one or two guys in, and offense might run a little different. And that leads me to my second point on my campaign that I started about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Tailing Green 2022, might have to come sooner than my campaign projected. But I'm telling you, man, I know a lot of people out there don't want to hear it. The fans, I know you guys are mad, but just hear me out here. All right, let's just put this in to some football terms that you guys can understand.
Absolutely.
The 2015 Kansas City Chiefs had a quarterback that won them 11 games. He started in, I think, about 15. He won 11. In 2016, he won another 11 games. He played one extra game than the year before. He still won 11 games.
Okay.
But he was a guy that was not going to lose you the game, but he wasn't going to win you the game. So, in drives and, late in the game, we need a quarterback to make a play, he wasn't going to be able to do that, but you knew he wasn't going to go out there and throw 4 picks and, take a lot of chances, and he's not going to lose you, but he's not going to win you the game either. Mm-hmm. That same team drafted probably one of the most talented quarterbacks we've seen in the last 10 years, or ever maybe, in Patrick Mahomes. All right?
Right.
So let's remember, he won 11 games 2 years back to back.
Yeah.
In the NFL, Smith, we obviously know that winning 11 games in the NFL, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
And they used their first round draft pick the next year, after winning 11 games with that guy, to get a quarterback in the first round. And what changes? They go all the way to the AFC Championship game and lose to the GOAT, who we all know, Tom Brady. Follow up that year by a Super Bowl. Follow up the next year, they lose to the GOAT. Nothing else changed on that entire team.
Yeah.
Nothing else. They didn't establish a run game. They had Kareem Hunt, actually. So when Alex Smith played, they actually did have a run game in Kareem Hunt. But then when Patrick Mahomes got there was no more Kareem Hunt, right? Mm-hmm. They lost Kareem Hunt. So they lose a whole run game, but because they have a quarterback that can make plays, that can move around and still make the throws, that made them that much better. Now that is where my point is coming with where Boise State sits. You got a guy who's not going to lose you games, but he's not going to win you games. We saw what happened to UCF. I think everybody, including my mother, knew that Hank should have just ran that ball. Now, he's not going to win us the game, but he's not going to necessarily lose us the game. We can't put the entire game off of him doing that, but he obviously could have did other things in that game in the whole second half to help us win that game.
We go live now to Texas. Shane Williams-Rhodes' mom joins the program. Mrs. Williams-Rhodes. I'm just kidding.
So that's where I'm going with the Tailing Green theme that I've been, throwing out there the last few weeks, is because a guy that can move out of the pocket and still make the throw. He can make a guy miss and still make a throw. I'm not saying the guy's Lamar Jackson. We're not going to get that out of him. But he's going to be able to make plays out of the pocket. The guy is 6'6"? It's not that easy to tackle someone who's 6'6".
Hey, I will say I was down on the field watching the guys warm up the other day. And, this goes back to when Leighton Vander Esch was here, when we joked around about that get off the bus factor. It's like, you want to intimidate somebody, you send Leighton Vander Esch down the stairs, getting off the bus first. DeMarcus Lawrence, Kamale Correa. Nowadays you look at a JL Skinner or something like that. But I got to say, when you look at Taylen Green's size and seeing it down on the field is different. He does have a little bit of get off the bus factor. You go, whoa, look at this guy. You're right. 6'6" can move a little bit. But, does that might solve a few snaps a game, obviously, Shane, but is that like something that's really sustainable for a full game right now in your mind? I mean, honestly, it's a tough question to answer because we haven't seen a ton of Taylon Green. I mean, and what I mean by that, he played a few snaps against Utah State. We've seen him a little bit out at practice, but our access to practice has been really limited. So don't know like him as a thrower. What's he like when he's in the heat of battle? We don't know how he necessarily is going to react. But you talk about a problem, or you talk about a solution to some of Boise State's problems. Is that a realistic expectation that's sustainable for an entire game at this point in time, especially going on the road to 10th ranked BYU in Provo?
I'm definitely not saying let's throw this guy in here for his first start against BYU. That is not the best advice, and I'm not giving that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that right now. But what I am saying is, and you got a point there, we don't know if he can make the throws. I know I've personally been to a few practices. I know you've been definitely more than I have, but I've been at practices.
You're a former player, Shane. You're in the brotherhood. I'm going to guess that at times you have better access than I do.
I've seen him make some throws. Is what I'm going to say. I've been to some practices. I've seen some throws. Okay. I've seen him move a little bit. I mean, he was obviously coming back from his knee injury, but
right.
That kid, man, I'm telling you, his ceiling, that he has the highest ceiling of anyone in that quarterback room. And then when you look at it over time, he's a freshman now. Does it hurt us to go ahead and throw him in there, let him start? Even if you wait to the last 3 or 4 games and then let him start getting more reps, is it bad that we still get a redshirt year out of him if we let him play in 2 games and get a little experience? And then we start off next year, man, we got a freshman coming in again. He'll still be a freshman, and we got 3-4 years out of him.
Right.
I don't see.
The good thing is he's got 3 more games that he can play in. He played in one at Utah State, had a few snaps, used down near the goal line for a running play at one point in time. I'm not going to disagree with you. I think that he might have the highest ceiling, but that's also just because he's the closest to the ceiling in the quarterback room over there. He does look physically gifted. And, man, I tell you, talking with him, a bright dude that loves the game of football. And that was just my discussion that I had with him after he committed to Boise State a little over a year ago. Outside of that, we haven't had a ton of interaction with Taylon Green. And that's usually the case with true freshmen. Heck, in the previous regimes, we weren't even allowed to talk to true freshmen. It was a very, very unique circumstance if we ever spoke to a true freshman. Did we talk to you as a true freshman, Shane? I'm trying to think back. You might have been one of the exceptions.
I think so. I think maybe, possibly.
Because you played as a true freshman. You might have been. Yeah, I know it was a long time ago. You might have been one of the few exceptions, though, to that rule. Now it's not necessarily a rule where we can't, but there are a few circumstances where we do. Just the nature of it. I think, man, I just have a tough time with this one because I don't know if, and this is me personally, if putting somebody else back there at this point in time is the solution. I think that, man, there might be a way to help who is taking snaps at this moment in time. And it does kind of start up front. I will say this. I never played the offensive line. I don't know much about how to play the offensive line. I know that it's more complicated than a lot of people out there believe. But how would you assess their play? And last week, let me ask you this too, Shane. In all your time of playing football, have you ever seen a scenario where going into week 5, you essentially had 4 people starting at new positions on the offensive line? Because John Ojukwu started at left tackle. That's where he's been at all season. But outside of that, you had Jake Stetz moving from right guard to left guard, Will Farah moving from one of the guard positions to center, and then you had Ben Dooley, who slid in from right tackle and was playing right guard, and then you brought in Uzo Suji off the bench essentially and had him start at right tackle. I mean, that seems like a lot of searching and a lot of finding as you go into week 5 of the season up front.
I think that goes into what you were just saying. I think it's a combination of not only injuries, but them trying to figure it out, trying to figure out what works. That is right. version of changing things to try to see if, okay, maybe this will work this week and then we'll roll with this. But it's not working, and that's tough. I mean, just in the interior side of the offense and defense, it's not looking good right now. I mean, I think I looked on the defensive end. At the end of the game, we had 2 QB hurries the whole game. 2. We had some sacks in there, but as far as QB hurries, we had 2. I mean, we can't get pressure. We can't run the ball. We can't protect it for the quarterback. I mean, it's tough. It's just a tough scenario to be in, which I think the worst combination of that is having a quarterback who can't move and having an offensive line who can't block. That's not a good combination.
So maybe it's not so much. I guess I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this right. Even what you're saying about Hank might not necessarily be an indictment on Hank, but it's almost being like, hey, if this is what you're being given at this moment, then this is what you might have to do, even if you don't see that as like super ideal. But you got to play to your strengths, essentially, right? Like,
exactly.
I see what you're saying there, because I do think that Hank has been. I mean, again, just to reiterate, I think Hank's been tough. I think Hank has probably taken a little too much criticism at times, but I do think that. I think they could help him more. I mean, he threw for 388 last week, which is a career high. He is one of only a few quarterbacks. I think Ryan Dinwiddie did it, maybe Kellen Moore. I think there's one more in there that threw for 340, that have thrown for 340 or more yards while completing 70% of their passes multiple times in a single season. Hank's done that twice through 5 games. So, I mean, if he does it once more, he'll have done that more than any other quarterback as far back as the stats go for Boise State. So that seems unique. But let's just we're going to talk about BYU here, but in a little bit the specific matchup.
Yeah. But just to clarify, just to clarify, Hank. I don't think anybody can show me anywhere where I've ever said Hank is the problem. Hank is the problem, but the situation he is in and the abilities that he have don't go together, which that's where the problem comes in, you know.
I get you. And that's why I just wanted to talk through that. Yeah, because I just wanted to. Yeah. Right, and I get that. That's why I just wanted to talk through that. But look, we're going to get to this BYU matchup in just a second here. But like looking at BYU, for example, BYU in 2019 struggled, and that sucks because Boise State was great that year. BYU wasn't that good, but BYU scored a big time upset over the Broncos in 19. But the reason why I bring up that year, and you look at some of their struggles, and a lot of it could be attributed to their guys up front. In 2019, BYU was tied for 86th in the country in protecting the quarterback. So essentially, how many sacks they gave up. They were tied for 86th in the country. Right now, they are top 10 in the country, Shane. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to their offensive line, who at the moment, guess where they rank? 9th in the country in terms of sacks per game. So 2 years ago, they were one of the worst in the country at protecting their quarterbacks. Now they are one of the best in the country at protecting their quarterbacks. And look at their records a few years, in 2019 compared to where they stand today. They're undefeated. They are a top 10 team in the country. I'll also go back to this. In 2019, they couldn't pressure the quarterback either. Tied for a 111th in the country in sacks. One of the worst teams in the country when it came to pressuring the quarterback. And you look at where they're at today. I mean, honestly, they're still kind of somewhat middle of the road, but at least they're now up into the upper half of college football in terms of they're into the top 50 in pressuring the quarterback. So much of this has to do with the offensive line and even the defensive line. The defensive line in particular is in shambles because of injuries up front. There are more guys missing now off the initial two deep depth chart to start the season than are on it at this moment, or at least going into last game that was the case. This is, in my eyes, Shane, I mean, like, if that is where this team is struggling, that's going to require the most patience from Boise State fans, because that might not necessarily be an overnight fix. I mean, it took BYU a couple of years to be able to rebuild and restructure their guys up front.
Yeah, agreed. It's not, you're not going to fix that overnight. It's a reason that we've been talking about the same. We have the keys to the game the same every week. It's a reason when we get here on this podcast every week, we're talking about the same things, whether we win or lose.
Yeah.
Even in wins and losses, we have the same exact problems.
And I think that's probably, and I think I kind of realized this last week, Shane, you know, like we get ready for these press conferences and we have our questions, and I hate answering the same question every week, but so far, like there have been commonalities in between, you know, amongst the defeats that Boise State has suffered. And those are an inability to run the football, although I think they were slightly better this last week. We can get to that in a second. But inability to run the football, inability to stop the run, and inability to get off the field on third downs, and a lackluster performance, in all honesty, calling a spade here, in the second half of ball games, particularly the third quarter. I mean, like, go back and you look at all of Boise State's losses, and like in every one of them, that jumps up at some point in time. And so I don't know if it would be better if it were to alter week to week. I don't know. Maybe it's easy to suggest that they can get this fixed because they know what they know where their deficiencies are. There's no question. Like, they know their deficiencies. So maybe they can get it figured out, but can they do it in time to compete on the road with the top 10 BYU team this week? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't see that happening. Yeah, it's tough, man. I think even in the wins, our third quarters weren't the best, but honestly, I saw you said you were going to come back to it, but you mentioned that our run game wasn't bad. But you want to know what? We were UTEP this week when it comes to the run game. UTEP, when they needed to run the ball at the beginning of the game, they were able to, but they got down and they had to pass the ball. That was us. We finally actually were able to establish a little bit of a run game, but they were scoring so fast and so easily that we had to throw the ball. We had no ability to just come out and run. I mean, we were down. I kind of look at this like we lost by 17. Yeah, we scored later in the game, but you know, it was at that point it was over. The game was over.
Yeah,
so
I agree. You score a touchdown. I mean, at that point in time, you're just counting on miracles in order to come back into the game. So you score a touchdown, you don't get an onside kick, game over. At that point in time, Boise State basically would have had to get 2 onside kicks. So, and that's why I said earlier, like, they lost by 10. In all honesty, felt like by a little bit more.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they did have success running the ball early in that game, and so much of it came behind the left side of that offensive line. They kept bouncing. George Alani specifically kept bouncing runs towards Jake Stetz and John Ojukwu, who they seem to find a strength there. They're like, you know what? Instead of spreading it out, we're going to put our 2 best on the left side, and we're going to try to go at them. And it seemed to work, and then it didn't. And now if you look at the overall rushing stats, they look horrible because of 2 bad snaps that resulted in negative 40 yards worth of plays. And that's another thing. I'll add that to the list. The bad snaps, too. A common thread amongst the losses. They have to get that fixed. They have to get that fixed. I mean, I have no other way to say it, Shane. I think they got to get that fixed.
That's Optimist Youth Football 101 right there.
I hate to be critical like that. I hate to be sarcastic like that, but it's true.
Yeah, you got to get the ball into the quarterback's hand before anything could happen. That's just how football works.
And that is why I still go for it.
No, it's getting snapped into the turf, and it's tough. And I mean, I saw Hank actually make some tough ones. He actually caught some tough ones that she shouldn't have, but it's tough, man. Hank's in a very, very rough position because as we sit here and everyone online, we obviously talk about certain changes that need to be made. The guy's again, the guy's playing great. He's playing above average. He's playing great. He's just in a really bad situation.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to kind of describe this right now. And I know, like, it took us maybe a moment to actually get to that concise, like, summary of Hank Bachmeier. I do think he's playing very, very good. The situation that he's been put in at times has not been stellar. And that could be bad snaps, pressure on the quarterback, him making a couple questionable throws at times, and I think that he'd be the first to admit that. The UCF one was not good. The pick in the second half against Oklahoma State was not good. So has Hank been perfect? We can see right there. No. But I still feel like he's done his best to keep this team in the hunt. And another thing about Hank, I think people like playing for him. I think that he shows his toughness. I don't think he's like one of those quarterback prima donnas that, slides at any occasion that he can get, that doesn't like to get hit, that tries to shy away from contact. I think it's in like the fiber of who he is to like his makeup is like that. Like that's what he likes. Maybe it makes him feel like he's a part of the game. That first hit makes him feel like he's in it. I don't know. I'm just get a little concerned about the 8th and 9th hit on him, but yeah. It'll just be interesting to see if they can rally around him, eliminate these negative plays, build off a little bit of positivity in terms of the traditional ground game, and see if they can put it all together against a BYU team that is very good. Shane, we have talked about bulletin board material on this podcast before, and Shane McClellan more adamantly kind of believed in that too, I believe. But we're last year on the Blue, BYU, I think it was the most lopsided loss, definitely in the last 20 years, maybe ever. I don't know, that Boise State sustained on the Blue. They got lost, they lost, what was it, 51-17 or something like that. After the game, before leaving the field, BYU crowded around. They took a team picture. That thing got blasted all over social media. Boise State players have brought up that picture a number of times this week. Cyrus Abibi-Likio, who's a transfer from Oregon, wasn't here for that moment. Today he told me that George Holani informed him of it a couple weeks ago. And he says, in all honesty, it pisses him off because he knows that photo irritates his brothers in that locker room over there. So we get back to, again, the bulletin board material question. Does that play any factor into Boise State's will and desire to come out and play well at BYU this weekend?
Yeah, it'll definitely get them fired up. And I can guarantee you on Monday or Tuesday when they had that first team meeting for the week, that definitely was put up on the screen for sure. Just so everyone remembered, people who didn't know, they for sure know now. And so I think that's a good thing for us. We have some motivation, some extra motivation, as if we needed it anymore after all these losses we've already taken. But that'll be.
I remember when this matchup first started, Shane, and you were, heck, man, this goes back to when you were still playing for Boise State. It almost felt a little bit like it was being a forced rivalry off the top. And the reason why Boise State had success against BYU, and to be a true rival, like a true rivalry, both sides have to win, in my opinion. Because if one team just steamrolls the other one for eternity, it's hard for it to really feel like a rivalry. Now BYU's won 2 in a row. What's that?
I think we're 7-4. I'm not keeping tallies, but I got a lot of BYU friends, so I got to keep
Well, BYU's won 2 in a row, man. And at this point in time, they're the heavy favorites to win 3 in a row. This absolutely, to me, feels like a rivalry now, way more than even the Nevada game. I don't think these sides like each other. You can tell when BYU won on the Blue here last year how much it meant to them, because the picture is not the only thing floating around out there on social media. A lot of the guys posted videos bragging about winning on the Blue. I mean, I don't know. If there is ever a game that comes at the right time, as oddly as that sounds, maybe this is the matchup you want. The Cougars are a little banged up at quarterback. We don't know what that's going to look like. We know the number 2, who is more essentially their 1B quarterback, because he's very good in Romney. We know that he's out. So it's either their first-string quarterback in Hall, or they go down the depth chart a little bit to their third-string quarterback, who is still like a 4-star freshman. I mean, definitely nobody to bat an eye at. Boise State would probably love to have that as their third-string quarterback at this point in time. But I just think that when you look at everything that goes into this game, the positive distraction of a rivalry, putting a little extra juice into this thing, Boise State has nothing to lose in a sense. I mean, BYU's the team with the top 10 record or top 10 ranking. They're undefeated. They're going to be at home. Boise State has started fast this year. They need to find a way to start fast and still be able to be productive after that fast start. And maybe at that point in time, if they can start fast, they make BYU start to feel the pressure a little bit and their perfect season in balance.
I'm going to say this. This is probably the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life or seen in my life. But I want to say it's been 7 years since the starting quarterback from Boise State and the starting quarterback from BYU have played each other. Every year for like 6 or 7 years, Boise State either has a backup plan or BYU either has a backup plan. And honestly, it never matters who the quarterbacks are because that's not typically where these games have been won and lost. It's just been, which is, I go back to it again, it's been won and lost in the interior. And we obviously know they have a really good interior, and ours is struggling right now. But I want to say I think it goes back to my last year playing. When I played, they had a backup quarterback, and he was just throwing Hail Marys 3 weeks straight and winning games. Then I think the next time they played, they had their third string quarterback playing, and they won the game. It's just no matter what, there's never seems to be both starters playing. So I don't even think it matters who's playing quarterback because it hasn't seemed to taken any toll on either program, no matter who is playing. And I think one year, both teams, is either one team has a backup quarterback or both teams has a backup quarterback. It's just, we never can do it.
Last year, Boise State was down to what was a walk-on at the time in Cade Finnegan. Cade has since transferred to BYU. The year prior to that was Chase Cord, who I had an awesome discussion with earlier this year about, his injury status going into that game. Hank Bachmeier was a true freshman that year. He was the starter. He goes out with an injury. Chase Cord comes in and was playing through like every injury in the book. One of those scenarios where he's shooting up his throwing arm in order to, just be able to get out there and play. And when I say shooting up, I mean that it sounds different in the real world, whatever for normal people, but probably fairly common for football players to do that. I would assume, right, Shane?
I might have got shot up once, twice.
Yeah, we're talking about that. Like, how does that process go, Shane? Like what's going on there? I feel like we need to be a little more transparent. I feel like I'm making it sound way too extreme.
Honestly, I know for me, mine was, I want to say maybe it was my sophomore year. Mine was sophomore year. I hate to say this. I don't like telling people this, but hey, it's the podcast. You got to be honest. I got blown up by the kicker on a kick return. We played San Diego State at home. It was a tough game.
Okay.
And the kicker blew me up on a kick return. Actually, this might have been my freshman year. Because I believe me and Jay Ajayi were still doing kick return. You probably don't remember seeing Jay at kick return too often, but this is when we really didn't play too much. But I got blown up by the kicker, and I sprained my AC joint, and it felt like my arm was going to fall off. I couldn't really lift it above my head. And yeah, man, the only way I was going to be able to use it, they had to give me a cortisone shot in my shoulder. They gave it to me. I swear it was like I had a new arm. And so what it does is it numbs you up and you don't feel the pain, but your body obviously is still not right. So two things can happen. You either can damage it worse because you're doing things that it's not capable of doing, or you do things on it and it strengthens it, and it obviously gets stronger over time because you keep working it, you strengthen it, and then it's back to normal. Now, what happened for me is I got one week, I was good, and then after the game, it was hurting again. So then they gave me another one the next week, and after that, I never had a problem out of my shoulder again. I built up enough strength from continuously to use it and do that it was strong enough, and I never had a problem with it. Now, it sticks out just a little bit on one side, but no pain.
I got this giant bulb coming out of my shoulder now, but whatever.
No pain, but yeah, those cortisones, man. They people get them in their knees, the ankles. I want to say I got one in my ankle too my senior year when I got hurt in fall camp. Yeah, I shouldn't have played that year, man. I should have sat out, but I got a cortisone shot and just said, screw it. We're going to play. We got to beat Pete.
And you did.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true. Yeah. This is true.
Well, what has to go right for Boise State on Saturday to have a chance? The funny thing is, I feel like we know. Like, there's really no guessing with this team at this point. Like, I feel like we know the answer to these questions now because we've basically been repeating them for the last 4 weeks. But for the sake of directing this specifically at a BYU team, what has to go right on Saturday, Shane?
I think I have a different answer than you have.
Okay, because perfect.
I'm going to go with something that I feel like
a different answer than you have.
I feel like we have to go with something that's more likely to happen rather than praying for something to happen that hasn't happened all season.
Okay.
We got to have some turnover. We got to have a lot of turnovers. So we need the ball to roll our way. We need some tip balls that turn into turnovers. We need big plays that aren't just big plays. We need like big plays that are touchdowns. We don't need to get the ball to the 5-yard line and then struggle to get in. We got to have – those are the two things. We need turnovers that could possibly turn into points, and then we need explosive plays that are touchdowns. That's what we need. We can't play the I'm going to try to run the ball the whole game and beat you up game because these guys, every year I played them, they were bigger than just about every opponent we played. They're going to be big. They're going to be fast. They're going to be strong. We can't go punch to punch with these guys. We're gonna have to. We need big plays.
I agree. I'll agree with that. The one negative there, BYU, one of the best teams in the country in turnover differential. They rank 8th right now, so that's going to be something that's going to be a little tough. Boise State very good in their own right, though. They've actually, despite not having any last game, they have forced 12 turnovers, which coincidentally ranks tied for 8th most in the country. They've just given it away a few more times than BYU has this season. That's why their turnover differential is a little lower than the Cougars at this point. I want to see, and I've asked some of the guys about it this week, and it might be boring, better complementary football. Pick up first downs on offense and get off the field on 3rd down on defense. And in these 3rd and long situations so far this year, feels like Boise State's given up too many first downs, which again prolongs the drive for the opposing offense and keeps your offense chilling over there on the sideline. Really hurt Boise State against Oklahoma State. They didn't have a ton of 3rd and long conversions in that game particularly, but they were able to stay on the field. You see like the UCF game last week against Nevada, a number of 3rd and longs. I think it's interesting when you look at the down and distance, 3rd and 7 and 9 specifically, opposing quarterbacks have completed 9 passes. All 9 of those passes, Shane, have gone for first downs. Kind of suggests to me that, and on top of that, they're completing, almost 70% of their passes in those specific spots. So that suggests to me that you're not getting enough pressure on the quarterback because if you were, you might be forcing a couple checkdowns and guys would be falling short of the sticks, if you will. I just want to see better complementary football. And I think that's not – it's something different than what we've said. That's mostly why I'm going with this. But if they can sustain drives better on offense, move the chains more, run the ball a little bit better, that'll be huge. And getting off the field on 3rd down specifically, something Boise State has to do moving forward. What do you think?
I like it. I like that. Just tell me that you're not going to lead this into me having to pick who's going to win the game and if we're going to cover the spread.
I mean, that's, we do that about this time of the show every week here, Shane, and I don't want to set you up to pick against your alma mater. And if you are, well, no, we're just going to do it because that puts you in a just a funny, awkward situation. So, I mean, straight up, Shane, I saw the line on this game initially. It's crazy to me that it was 1 on Sunday. And I don't know what was going on with that line. Maybe it's now since bumped up to 6. I don't know if that suggests that Vegas knows that their starting quarterback, Jaron Hall, is going to be available, or if people just bet that line up to 6 or not. One thing I will say, and this isn't necessarily betting advice. This is more just remorse from what I've experienced in the past. But for those people that think like a line in Vegas is just so obvious one side, Vegas is usually trying to bait you into something because there are a lot of bright lights down there. There are a lot of really cool tall buildings down there. They're good at doing this. And so early in the week, I think that they were trying to bait teams in to betting on BYU with the line so low. And the reason why I say, which in turn suggests they have confidence in BYU because they want you to put money on a team so they can take said money from you. So now that the line's up to 6, I don't know if I quite feel that way anymore. I still do feel like that line is a little low considering Tyler Algiers in their backfield, phenomenal running back, big physical offensive line. Even with the doubt at quarterback, I still like what BYU brings to the table. I think that they have a style where they can win a ball game despite not being at full strength and maybe not even having their best day. For that reason, I just have confidence that BYU gets it done. So I'm sorry to have to say that, Bronco Nation, but I think that BYU wins this game.
I will not allow you to bait me into being to me being exiled from this program. So I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna roll with 23-21.
Oh,
Boise State.
Okay.
Actually, no, 28-23. Boise State.
How does Boise State win this game 28-23, Shane?
Through those keys.
How many yards does Hank Bachmeier throw?
Yeah. Hank Bachmeier does not throw for 300 yards, I tell you that. And he probably doesn't even throw for 250, not on these guys. He's going to be running for his life. He's going to have to make some plays like I've been saying what we need. He's got to make the first guy miss because there's going to be some guys in his face this week. I don't know if running the ball is going to do us much either because they have a great defensive line, but our receivers are going to make some plays. We're going to have some explosive plays for touchdowns. We're going to get some interceptions, some fumble recoveries for some touchdowns, and that's how we win the game. We won't have a lot of yards. We're going to find a way to win. We're going to do exactly what Oklahoma State did to us.
Okay. I like that. Hey, it worked for Oklahoma State, who, by the way, is now ranked 12th in the country. Unbelievable. They're a whistle away from an ill-advised whistle away from losing on the blue, and because of that, they are now ranked 12th in the entire country. Gosh, that one still hurts, I would say, if you're Boise State. Should have a big victory over Oklahoma State right now, but unfortunately they don't. Yeah, I love it. Keeping faith in the alma mater. Why not, Shane, at this point in time? Keep faith in those guys, and we'll see if they can get it done. Boise State, a 6-point underdog at the time we're doing this podcast, and it would be huge. Andy Avalos said earlier this week, he was on the last Boise State team as a player that started the season 2-3. And he said a lot of great things came from that. He didn't go too much further into that, but I will tell you this. 2 weeks after that 2-3 start, Shane, Boise State went on the road and beat a very good Fresno State team that had a very good quarterback that went number 1 overall, David Carr. They were ranked 8th in the country. At that point in time, it was arguably easily one of the biggest wins in school history. This week, Boise State sits at 2-3. They're going on the road, taking on a rival that's top 10 in the country again. I think that Andy Avalos is likely hoping that history repeats itself. Boise State goes and gets a big road victory. They spin this thing to get a little bit of momentum, and they finish the season strong. Still a lot on the table for this team, Shane. It's funny. I don't think there was much margin for error for Boise State teams in the past, but given their schedule this year and some of the success of the Mountain West teams this year, Boise State can still have a really good season. If they beat BYU, they'll wake people up. And then, heck, if they run the table, which I'm not trying to say is super realistic right now, but if they were to, they could be a top 25 team given who's left on their own schedule this year. So we'll see how it goes, Shane, but we appreciate it as always, bud.
I like that stat you just threw out there about with Avalos and who we beat. I might go put some money on Boise State. You can win a lot of money.
Hey, I'm just trying to say, Hey, there's reason for hope. There's reason for optimism. Boise State finally legitimately has the chip back on their shoulder. It's not that cliche coach speak that you guys have been trying to throw at us for years now. They are a legitimate underdog going on the road, trying to basically follow the same path that made them such a fun story to begin with 20 years ago. So we'll see if history can repeat for Coach Avalos as a coach, 20 years later that was successful for him as a player. And we'll see how this thing turns out. Pre-game show, special edition, will be Saturday afternoon. We'll get you as close to kickoff as humanly possible. Will Hall's going to be live in Provo. I'm going to be back here holding down the fort in the studio. And hopefully you find a fun place to watch it too, Shane.
Oh, yeah, we'll do.
All right. Until next time, we'll see you here on Jay's Sports Bar, serving the out of sports news.